Now joining us on the KCOU Sports Alumni Show, he's a Mizzou graduate of 2022. He's worked in a variety of roles, including media relations for the Kansas City Royals, also has broadcasted in minor league baseball for the Frisco Rough Riders and Myrtle Beach Pelicans, and he's recently been named the new voice of the Montgomery Biscuits, the Double-A affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays, and of course, a former KCOU Sports member. It's Luke Moehle. Luke, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great, and Ian, I'm impressed. I was wondering that whole time. You did the research, you were going through the whole way, and I was wondering the one thing we didn't talk about before we hit record, how to pronounce my last name. No one ever gets it right, so I tip the cap for you doing the research. But can't thank you enough for having me, and it brings me back to the glory days, being with Mizzou at and the journalism program. It's some of the best days of my life, and feel a little bit more connected. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I will start right at the beginning. Before we do that, though, I do want to congratulate you on the Montgomery role and just ask you how the first few games have been going for you down there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We've got a really special group. We have a lot of returners. The Rays organization is one that's really easy to work with. There's a lot of good people in the organization. There's obviously good baseball players. The Rays do a really good job at, they're always committing trades. If you look at our roster, you're going to see drafted by this organization, the Orioles, the Padres, every team that you can think of, you can find somewhere in the Rays organization because they're always wheeling and dealing. That's awesome, but it's difficult to get guys to mesh like that. They come up through a system with someone, they get to double A with, some organization, and then they become a melting pot with a bunch of different guys. And so it's hard to get guys to gel. And they do a good job of finding personalities that match. And I think that's led to some winning for them over the last good chunk of time, the last decade. The Rays have been pretty relevant at the big league level, and so it's been really fun to watch that kind of from the inside, having a lot of fun. We've got a good special group, and excited to do the whole 138 stretch.
So going back to your time before Mizzou, before all of your success broadcasting baseball, I'm curious, did you have any play-by-play broadcasters that you looked up to growing up that inspired you to go into this profession?
It's a good question. I think my hero, I'm a Kansas City guy, and it's pre my time, but I think the first broadcaster that I really latched onto was Kevin Harlan. And, he did some stuff in Kansas City. It's where he got his start, took the stepping stones up, becomes a giant voice. I would say Kevin Harlan has kind of been, my idol, which is kind of interesting because I've always thought of myself as a baseball guy. I played baseball all the way growing up, went into school, started as a walk-on at Mizzou, and then transferred into kind of a bullpen catcher manager type of role. And when COVID happened, it was like, okay, I'm investing a little too much time into something that's not paying dividends for me in any way. So I should probably start focusing a little bit more on my, future career and hopefully broadcasting. So uh, it's funny to think like baseball has kind of always been the sport that shaped me the most. I love watching football, I call football, basketball the same way. But I think of what broadcaster really pops into my head, and it's not a baseball specific guy. It's, a guy that primarily does major network, football and basketball.
Yeah, I think Kevin Harlan's a guy that so many young broadcasters look up to. I know that I do. Do you have a favorite call of his?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. I love how he's able to be so serious and, elevate a game to, it could be just, he's always calling big games, is the matter of fact, but he could call just a local high school game and make it sound like the most important thing going on in the world that night. And then on top of that, he can flip that switch to make it feel important and then just be conversational. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a specific call, but just little things like someone running on the field or a cat darting on the football surf, like whatever it is. He does a good job of keeping things very lighthearted, but also knowing when to go very serious and make this moment feel as big as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. What ended up leading to your decision to attend Mizzou and to join KCOU and to get involved here?
Yeah, my both of my parents went to Mizzou. Neither of my parents graduated from Mizzou, but they were both around Mizzou at some points in their college careers. They made a couple different stops at schools for schooling purposes, not in the journalism field whatsoever. But growing up, my mom it's funny that how everything goes full circle. My mom and grandma used to say that I knew all the Kansas City Royals statistics, and that I was, instead of brushing my teeth in the morning, I was trying to tell her about Mike Sweeney's batting average or whatever. And so my grandma would say, he would make a good broadcaster. Well, now you get to this point and you understand broadcast isn't stats. It's more of telling the story. You can use some stats to mold your storylines, but it's not all about stats and shoving stats in someone's face. That's honestly what you don't want to do. But grew up a Mizzou fan, watching guys like James Franklin at quarterback and Matty Mock, and grew up in Lee Summit where Drew Lock became the quarterback. Right about that time when I was in high school was his days at Mizzou. So watching those guys play football, watching the basketball team thrive in the early 2010s was kind of the prime time for me. I was around 10 years old, so knew what was going on at that time, and uh, just loved the environment that was there. And then when it all push comes to shove, the journalism program is one of the best in the country, and it's fun to see on the professional side how well respected Mizzou is. You have your Syracuse, you have your Arizona State, and you have your Mizzou. Those are the big three that everyone mentions. And then Northwestern does a good job, and you can find good broadcasters at any school. But Mizzou does a really good job of providing an opportunity, like you just mentioned for KCOU. It was a no-brainer to me to hop on it and try a show. I didn't know if I wanted to do radio and host a show or if I wanted to produce. I kind of always thought what I wanted to do was play by play, and I got a chance to try some of that out. And I got to start before that, but I knew that it was an opportunity, kind of a blank canvas to paint for myself. And that's what KCOU does. And it's just really special that you guys are able to mold what you want. You get what you put into it, and it's awesome to see everything you guys are doing. Obviously, the stream that's going on right now it's just a cool culmination of a lot of people's work, and it's just awesome to see that students can come together and be like, 1 minute we're in class, we're taking tests, the next minute we're hanging out with friends. But for right now, we're going to lock in and work on something that's going to better us for our careers. So, really cool to see that sort of thing. And I can't thank KCU enough for allowing me to be a part of a very small piece of the historic things that they've accomplished.
Yeah, we'll touch on KCOU in a second, but first, I just want to kind of go over. You mentioned briefly working with Mizzou baseball in your time here as a student, as a manager, as a bullpen catcher. What was that experience like? Just giving you an opportunity to be around a baseball team because here you are broadcasting in minor league baseball, and you got that experience in college while it wasn't necessarily broadcasting to be in that environment.
I think so much of specifically baseball, but really all sports for broadcasters, you hear a cliche term thrown around, but it's so true, and it's feel, having some feel. And it's more of a baseball term, but it can be applied to all sports, it can be applied to all professions, is understanding when to ask a question, when not to ask a question, when a guy's approachable, when he's not, like just understanding the situations. And I think for me, being around it as a player growing up and then playing pretty high level through high school and then, getting into Mizzou and being there and being able to catch guys' bullpens, you understand a little bit of the thought process of how guys are operating and things like that. But I think even more so, it just boils down to the feel aspect of things and understanding how to find a story and what stories you're hearing can be told and which ones you put in your back pocket and say, well, we're not going to talk about that, but that helps mend a relationship here between me and this guy. And so if he wants to tell me something, he can come to me and tell me something, and then at the end of it say, well, maybe we don't share that. And maybe you do want to share something about that. So you ask, a follow-up question of, can I share this and leave these details out or whatever it is? So finding the storylines, I think it helped with, as well as, learning how to approach getting them and how to tell them without making anybody too angry.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that sounds like great experience. Transitioning back into KCOU, are there any specific game broadcasts or shows that you did that stand out when you think about that time that are just maybe a little bit more memorable?
I think the one that stands out the most to me, well, there's two. One of them was the first ever volleyball game that I did, which was against Alabama, and I didn't know what I was doing. But the best thing about something like KCOU is it's a platform to learn, to grow, and it's not going to be, you're going to have some good moments on air, and you're going to be able to use that for tape. But there's also not hundreds of thousands of people listening in, and if you make a mistake, then it's the end of your career. So it's an open canvas that you're able to kind of navigate a broadcast. And I think the number one advice that I'm able to give out, that I love to hear given out, is say yes. And that's for me. If I could go back and do it again, I'd say yes more often and to more opportunities. I'm never going to call volleyball. Like that's not my goal, but when I got an opportunity to do it, it was like, well, if I can navigate, a couple hours of volleyball and do a pregame show and not really fully understand everything, and it's like cramming for a test. If I can learn how to navigate that, a game that I know like the back of my hand that I played my whole life, how much easier does that become for you? So that one stands out doing volleyball because it's still the only time that I've ever done it. And I think, if I went back and listened to the tape, if you found the archives of it, it wouldn't sound very good, but it taught me a lot. And I think that it teaches valuable lessons. The other one was I got to right after I called the career quits and hung up the cleats baseball wise, I did a Tennessee and Mizzou game, and Tony Vitello, being the head coach there, now the manager of the Giants, which is another storyline that's just ridiculous. Well, it was really special, and I remember doing it. It was me and Nash Walker were on the call, and Nash is in AAA Reno right now, so stay connected with Nash. And yeah, I remember doing that one because we were two young college guys just learning how to do it. And for me, it was I hadn't done very much baseball because I'd always been busy in baseball seasons. I did some summer league stuff, but just a couple games here and there. And then that was the first broadcast that I felt like, well, there's people that really care about this game other than mom and dad. So I remember that one. It stands out.
That's really cool. How do you feel that KCOU has helped set you up for the success that you're having in your career now? Kind of you going into that experience that you got doing things like calling volleyball and getting to call baseball for really the first time. Like, how has that set you up for where you're at right now?
I think it teaches a lot about how to be a professional, and how to plan for things. I remember doing a B stream radio show by myself, and I had it all scripted out on a Google Doc, like, oh, I'm gonna mow through this, and I just remember it being a disaster. I was like, this was not good. Um, but that's why we do it, is as you learn how to do it, and then okay, so I did this wrong, how do I fix that? And that's still to this day what I'm doing is, I have meetings all the time with broadcasters at all different levels, and it's, hey, let me look at your tape, you look at mine, let's look back at this and see what are you doing that I think I could grab from, and what are you doing that I think you should maybe tweak a little bit so that it would sound better to the listener or to the viewer, however you're calling a game. And I just think that it's the starting point. It's kind of a jump off point at KCOU for college students to get real experience. It's not, oh, we were in, the dorm room and recorded this on our phone and then edited it down and put it out on a podcast, which is great experience too. But this is a live station that has listeners that are driving on the way to work, that it covers an area, so there are people listening, so there's an extra level of, okay, I have to be ready for this is someone out there is listening, and if I'm not doing my part, then I'm ruining the reputation of this show or the station as a whole. And in all reality, you're not, but it feels that way. And there's a little bit of added pressure. It feels more serious. And I think that that's important because when you get out in the real world and you're doing a show or calling a game or whatever it might be, like the pressure is there. There's people listening, and learning how to deal with that pressure and how to respond to it, I think is just a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mentioned in the beginning the baseball organizations that you've been a part of already in your career. Could you take me a little bit through that journey more in depth and tell me what you've learned along the way and what's helped you get to where you're at now through working in minor league baseball and getting that experience?
Yeah, I think just to kind of start things off, my last year in the journalism program was 2021. I claim to graduate in 2022 because I graduated with journalism and I knew I was going to graduate early just from some credit hours in high school. And it's like, why would you want to leave college early? Like, you need the full experience. So I technically did leave early still. I was a semester short because my last semester was a sport management capstone internship. And what I did was I went to the Cape Cod League and got to call summer college wood bat games and had a lot of fun. Met some great people that I'm still in contact with, and some that work in minor league baseball currently. And so it was cool to get that start to kind of get going that way. And then the first thing that I got when coming out of that and trying to break into minor league baseball was that I needed more media relations experience. I had written stories and things like that, and that's all fine and dandy, but we wanted to see more game notes, more of that sort of thing. Because when you're in minor league baseball specifically, it's most of the time a one-man band. You're calling the games. You might have a broadcast partner that can help with the media relations side as well, but for me, I've always been kind of solo, except for when I was an assistant. And so since I've been a number one, it's just been me. And learning how to balance time and all that stuff, it goes a long way. But media relations was the feedback that I got, was like maybe some media relations. So I joined, got my foot in the door with the Kansas City Royals at the big league level doing media relations, and was able to really learn a lot, just to dive in on that, knowing this isn't really what I love. I love being on air. I love talking about the game and explaining, connecting with a fan. But sometimes you have to experience something else so that it can open doors for what you really want to do. And that's exactly what it was for me. It was a super rewarding experience and learned a lot. And now I'm applying that at all my different steps. So I started in minor league baseball as an assistant in Frisco, Texas with the Rangers AA affiliate, the Frisco Rough Riders. Did a year there and then got hired as the lead broadcaster in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is the Pelicans, the single A affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, and then now in double A with the Rays, the Montgomery Biscuits. And everywhere does things a little bit differently, and it's fun to watch how front offices work and operate. And I think the most rewarding thing is honestly just being able to go on the road and make connections. And you learn that the broadcast field is so connected. If you meet one person, it can lead to meeting three more people, and then those three people branch off, and it's like a giant coaching tree almost, but for broadcasters and how you build a connection. So it's really cool to make some different stops, to see some different places, experience some different things. But I think when it really boils down to it, it's just being able to meet so many different people and have those connections in your corner. It's all you could really ask for in this industry.
And for a lot of broadcasters that go into minor league baseball and are working their way through different destinations, the end goal is Major League Baseball. Is that the end goal for you? And can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think that most broadcasters go into the field thinking, this is where I want to be, or I have this dream job, or whatever it might be. I think when you really chop it up, you have to make sure that you love calling the lowest level of the game that you're doing as much as you're going to love doing the very top, because there's no guarantees that you're going to make it to a certain spot. It's a tough industry, even in minor league baseball. Job application opens on Teamworks or wherever you're finding it. They open it for a couple of days for the weekend. There's going to be 250 applicants in there. Now, there's a lot of those that are people that don't really understand the broadcast world, and they're like, "Well, it would be fun to work in minor league baseball," not knowing that, you know, people like you have been working really hard, putting in hours at a radio station to get an opportunity to do what they want to do, whether that's call games or whether that's host a radio show, whether that's production, whatever it might be, getting that experience. And so I think you really have to love doing it at every stop. Because if you don't love it at the very bottom, getting to the top, the only difference is the logo and the paycheck increases. So if you don't love it here, you're not going to love it up there. So I think that's the number one key. But yes, for me, the goal is to climb the ranks as far as this thing will take me, and uh, ideally, TV is kind of my passion. I like radio, I like TV, both. If I could do a mix of both, that'd be awesome because the freedom of radio is really special, and there's nobody in your ear telling you when you need to talk about something or what you need to talk about, other than maybe an ad read here or there. But the TV side has kind of always been my calling. I love kind of being just the extra piece to something. Let someone's eyes see something, but we're going to add some excitement here and there.
I think that's a great way to look at everything. One final question for you. What's the biggest challenge that you faced early in your career, and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest challenge, I'd say there's a couple. From a personal level, there's so many people that don't you listen back to your things and you don't like the sound of your voice, or maybe you like the sound of your voice too much. I think the number one thing is to be moldable. You don't have to take all the advice that you get, but get your stuff in front of people. And if I send tape to someone, the absolute worst thing they can give back to me is, you sound great. This is really good. Like if I send something off, I want you to say, to the littlest thing that you notice, tell me that I didn't like the way that sounded. Now, maybe you personally like that and you're not going to change that, but you want the opinion of a listener. And so learning how to take feedback, I think is the very, very top priority is get your stuff out there. And if you're having people just send it back saying, this is great, like you're not getting any better from that. And all of us at every level are trying to get better. There's very few broadcasters, even the guys at the very, very top, that are completely content at where they're at and how they sound and how they call a big moment. They're always trying to get better. And I think the best way to do that is to get your stuff in front of people and to get harsh feedback. And so I think first starting, as far as a challenge goes, it was learning how to take some of that critique. I've always had thick skin, so I'm okay with that. But I was always my biggest critic. And so being your biggest critic, when you send something off and then you hear other things that you didn't notice, it's like, man, am I really bad at this? Or am I bad at diagnosing what I'm bad at or what I need to be better at? And so I think taking criticism and really seeking out criticism, wanting to have that is what you want. And I think that's kind of the biggest obstacle for me, at least, was learning how to go find criticism and how to take it correctly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Luke, thank you so much for joining us on Sports Mania and taking the time to do this. Congratulations again on the role and have a great season in Montgomery.
Ian, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. And if there's ever anything that I can do to help, don't hesitate to reach out.